In 1944, German tank crews often found themselves frustrated and confused on the battlefield. They were trained, experienced, and confident in their skills. Yet time and again, Sherman tanks seemed to act faster than they could anticipate. German after-action reports described them as fast and chaotic, unpredictable, and difficult to engage effectively. Many crews never understood why. They assumed it was skill, luck, or the training of the Americans. In reality, it was a technological advantage that they could neither see nor easily counter. Every Sherman tank was equipped with a radio. Most carried the SCR 508 or SCR 538 models. These radios allowed tank crews to communicate instantly with other tanks in the unit. They could also relay information to and receive orders from their commander. It might sound like a small advantage, but in the confusion of combat, it was decisive. Most German tanks did not have radios. In 1944, only command tanks carried them. The rest of the tanks in a unit relied on hand signals, flags, or following the movement of other tanks visually. Imagine trying to coordinate an attack while under fire. You have no direct way to speak to your fellow tanks. You must rely on guesses, gestures, or prearranged signals. Mistakes were inevitable. German crews, in contrast, could share information immediately. They could adjust their tactics, shift fire, and respond to changing conditions as a unit. This allowed Sherman tanks to operate with a level of cohesion the Germans simply could not achieve. They could advance, retreat, or reposition quickly while maintaining coordinated fire. To German crews observing this, it often seemed like magic, but it was not magic. It was communication, training, and technology combined into a force multiplier that was invisible to the enemy. The presence of radios transformed ordinary crews into highly coordinated units. They could execute maneuvers, focus firepower on priority targets, and respond dynamically to threats on the battlefield. Even when outnumbered, American units maintained a level of tactical control that often gave them the upper hand in engagements. This advantage was both practical and psychological. German crews reported confusion and frustration in their logs. They could not anticipate Sherman movements. They could not respond effectively, and they often paid the price for it. On the battlefield, the advantage of radios became immediately apparent. Each Sherman crew could report enemy positions, request artillery support, or coordinate movement with nearby tanks. One tank spotting a target could call others to concentrate fire within seconds. German tanks often had to wait for visual signals. Every moment counted. Delays could and often did result in destruction or casualties. Sherman units adapted fluidly to changing circumstances. If terrain obstructed movement or enemy positions shifted, Shermans could maneuver immediately. They could flank, support, or fall back, all while maintaining communication with their command structure. German crews often had no such flexibility. They were forced to react, frequently out of sync, and without reliable information. The difference was most striking in close-range engagements. At distances of a few hundred meters, the speed of decision-making and coordinated action determined success. Shermans moved as a cohesive unit. They covered one another. They concentrated fire on priority targets. German units, even highly experienced ones, often appeared fragmented and delayed. German after-action reports repeatedly noted that American tanks acted with unexpected speed and too coordinated to predict. The cause remained invisible. Radios were silent and hidden, yet they provided a constant flow of information and orders. For American crews, it was a tool. For German crews, it was an unseen and lethal advantage. The radio allowed for real-time tactical adjustments. Crews could report enemy locations, adjust formations, and redirect firepower. This meant that, even when facing ambushes or superior numbers, Shermans could respond effectively. German crews often had to improvise, relying on guesswork and hand signals. This was slower and prone to error. The tactical agility of Sherman units was almost impossible to match without similar communication. The radio advantage also affected morale. Knowing that units could act cohesively and adjust quickly gave American crews confidence. German crews, seeing their attacks fail against coordinated movement, often experienced frustration and confusion. The advantage of radios extended beyond individual tanks. Every Sherman could connect to the battalion or regimental command. Orders flowed across units. Information about enemy positions and movements was shared quickly and accurately. This allowed commanders to direct operations in real time. They could issue instructions to multiple tanks, reposition forces, or redirect attacks based on the latest intelligence. German forces rarely had this capability. Only command tanks carried radios. Most units relied on pre-planned signals, which limited flexibility and delayed response. American units could conduct coordinated attacks across multiple fronts. They could redistribute firepower to weak points. They could respond instantly to counterattacks. Even when outnumbered, Shermans acted effectively because each tank contributed to the coordinated plan. German crews attempted to replicate these tactics, but without radios their attempts were inconsistent. Misunderstood gestures, delayed signals, or lost orders frequently caused disarray. Shermans moved like a single organism. Each crew understood the position and actions of others. This allowed for complex maneuvers, rapid repositioning, and coordinated fire. This advantage was visible in major battles across Western Europe. From the hedgerows of Normandy to the open fields of France, units equipped with radios outperformed those without. After the war, German engineers recognized the significance of radio communication. It was a decisive factor in Sherman effectiveness, even against heavier or more heavily armed German tanks. The ability to communicate was a force multiplier. It amplified the effectiveness of armor, firepower, and crew training. The SCR 508 and SCR 538 radios were reliable and relatively easy to operate. They allowed voice communication between tanks in a platoon or with the battalion command. Commands, observations, and requests could be transmitted instantly. This meant that crews could adjust formations, coordinate fire, and respond to threats in real time. German crews without radios relied on visual signals. Hand gestures, flags, and prearranged signals were the norm. In combat, this difference was critical. A Sherman crew could report an enemy tank and direct nearby tanks to concentrate fire immediately. German crews often had to guess or wait for the command tank to signal visually. Radios transformed tactical capability. Crews could support each other, cover flanks, and execute complex maneuvers efficiently. American commanders could manage entire battalions while remaining behind the front lines. They had situational awareness that German commanders could rarely achieve. This also allowed American units to respond to unexpected situations, such as ambushes, minefields, or rapid enemy movements. Communication enabled them to shift positions, protect vulnerable units, and exploit weaknesses in German defenses. The presence of radios made coordination instinctive. Crews acted in concert, not individually. This cohesion was impossible for German crews to match without similar equipment. Even small tactical advantages, such as targeting a weak point or avoiding incoming fire, were magnified by the ability to communicate instantly. The result was units that were faster, more adaptive, and more lethal than their opponents. The Sherman's radio was a silent but decisive weapon. It allowed inexperienced crews to fight effectively. It turned battlefield chaos into organized, coordinated attacks. It gave the U.S. Army an advantage that German crews often could not understand. Armor, speed, and firepower were important, but communication frequently determined the outcome. Sherman units struck as single, cohesive forces, fast, precise, coordinated. German crews, even veterans, often reacted instead of leading. They could not anticipate movements or focus fire efficiently. What appeared as chaos on the German side was organized precision on the American side. Powered by radio communication, a seemingly small advantage, a radio in each tank, transformed armored warfare. Shermans maximized the potential of each tank, coordinated attacks across wide areas, maintained control of the battlefield. Radios were more than technology. They were a force multiplier, a tool that enabled units to succeed in battle, protect crews, and contribute decisively to Allied victories. Even today, historians recognize that the radio-equipped Sherman was a critical factor in the effectiveness of American armored forces in Europe. It was technology, communication, and teamwork combined into a lethal advantage that the Germans struggled to counter.